Okay. We're on week 3 already. So this week, I think you're supposed to be focusing on protein, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully you guys have been packing your breakfast with protein. Start your day right, get filled up, and not have to snack so early in the morning. Next week, we'll jump and kind of pivot into physical activity, and talk about strength training and other types of exercises and stuff and the health benefits and weight loss and all that kind of stuff. So that will be a little bit of a shift away from nutrition. Quick before we jump in, I'm gonna go back. Your weekly challenge this week was to post a recipe in our recipe book, so to speak. And there are a lot of good. I went through this already, and there are awesome ideas in here. So if you're someone who's looking for ways to add more protein to your day, to your breakfasts, to your lunches, whatever, check out what some of our participants have been submitting. There's some really awesome ideas in here and things I've never done. I was just looking the other day, there was a whipped cookie dough, chocolate chip cookie dough one or something. Anyways, it sounded delicious when I looked at the ingredients and stuff. So, anyways, tons of options. If you haven't seen yours or haven't posted one in there, please do so for your team points. And take a look at what people are submitting, because I think you'll see a lot of good ideas in here. So thank you for those who have put stuff in there. I'll have to publish this in a more pretty version by the timer ends so everyone can have a copy. All right. Let's go back to our presentation. All right, so we're going to talk about today tips and tricks kind of help with our nutrition and our meal planning and making sure we're eating good choices and not just last minute grabbing what's available and not the best of choices. So we're going to focus on some easy meal prep ideas, meal planning ideas. Then we're going to pivot into like some popular eating styles, or I don't want to call them diets, but eating trends. So things like the keto diet versus intermittent fasting versus paleo versus low carb, all that kind of stuff. So we'll look at some of the more common ones. And then at the very end, if we've got time, I'll touch on how to kind of establish how much of your macros you should be eating or how many calories you should be eating in your day, and how you can kind of conceptualize that on how much protein I should be having and how much fat, how much carbs, if you really want to get serious on weight loss or weight gain or muscle gain or that kind of stuff. So some of us, it's too much science and information, but some people like that. So I'm going to throw it in at the end. So we'll start off with meal planning. Obviously, the biggest and most popular reason we have success when it comes to changing our eating habits is if we plan ahead. And I think we can all agree. If we're last minute choosers of what we're going to eat, it usually does not end up as a good choice, or the best choice, I should say. So that would involve shopping and planning ahead, right? And making sure that we go with a plan, maybe have a list, think about what we're going to be eating for the upcoming week and what we're going to need and how we're going to need to prep that. We did a lunch and learn for the county employees here a couple months ago on how to use AI to help with that. And if you haven't used AI, it's a great tool to use when it comes for meal planning. So I just used I've used all sorts of AI, chat, Copilot, whatever's out there. That's free. And just type in like, I want 5 family-friendly meals under $50 for a week that I can purchase with products on sale at Hy-Vee in zip code 50401 or whatever. And it will give you great breakdowns of things to go buy. It'll make you a shopping list. It'll give you 5 recipes or 5 meal ideas. And it will be kid friendly, and the total bill will be under $50, and it will probably use things that are on sale at Hy-Vee or whatever. So it's a cool tool to use. So think about that as not always a taboo thing. And then of course, prepping ahead, thinking about like stock, bulk cooking your meats or your vegetables, cutting and washing and prepping things when you've got more time on like a Sunday or a Saturday or a Monday, and then having that available for the rest of the week. Then when it comes to the actual week, think about portioning things. And then just as far as saving time and money, using reusable containers is sometimes helpful because you can use them to heat them in dishes, and rather than like take them from plastic or styrofoam and then putting them, and you just have more dishes, and that's something you don't like to do. So invest in good quality storage as well. If you're shopping, I think a cool trick is to use the 5 4 3 2 1 method if you're someone who's a complete loss for what you should be buying at the store. This is super easy, and I think does a good job of helping people stay somewhat healthy in their eating habits. So next time you go to the store, try it. Have at least 5 fruits or vegetables in your cart, at least 4 solid protein sources. So, a thing of chicken, raw chicken, maybe a pound of ground beef, maybe a tub of cottage cheese, and maybe a bag of string cheese or something, good 4 protein sources, 3 carbohydrates. So that might be like a loaf of bread and pasta and rice. Or if you're trying to be more healthy, that's going to be like whole wheat pita pockets or brown rice, things like that, quinoa. Have 2 healthy fats in your cart, so maybe grab some avocados or butter, olive oil, things you can flavor your meals with. And then, of course, we don't want to deprive ourselves, so then add a sweet treat. So if that's, a sleeve of cookies or it's your bag of Skittles or whatever, I mean, if it's going to help you get through the week, it's not going to be your whole cart, but it's going to be one item, and then the rest of it looks pretty good, right? So it's a cool tip if you're someone who struggles on what to buy. Use this method, see if it works for you. When it comes to prepping ahead, again, these are all hopefully things you've heard before, but prep your meats ahead of time, freeze them after they're cooked so they're easy to just heat up in the microwave or reheat on the stove and add to what you need. Portion them out so you're ready to pull them out in when you need them per recipe. Um, Prep your vegetables ahead of time, wash your fruits, that kind of stuff. I know there's lots of tips where people swear by storing their washed vegetables in mason jars because they last longer, and vegetables and that kind of stuff. So, um, Google or ask your friends what works well. I love this quote here on the right side. Meal prep is like building muscle. You just have to keep doing it to reap the benefits. It's practice and it's consistency. So true, right? Like we can't just exercise for one day and expect it to last the rest of our life. Same with our diet. We can't just plan to do good one day and expect it to carry over. It's a constant behavior, right? That we do these things. Sometimes people also are hung up by just like, I'm by myself, or it's just me and my husband now, or whatever, and I don't want to cook this giant meal. And, it's just easier for us to grab a frozen dinner or eat out because it's just 1 or 2 of us. So here are some ideas if you're in that rut. Obviously, cook your meals and then freeze leftover batches if that helps. Use the same protein source throughout the entire week. So if you're cooking a pound of hamburger, like maybe you only need a cup or half a cup of it for your meal, and you can use the rest throughout the rest of the meal or the week, like with chicken, things like that. Consider using smaller appliances or pots and pans. There's like a whole website, I think, just dedicated to individual meals you can make with a muffin tin. So, I mean, like, you can be super creative and think about ways to just cook for 1 or 2 people. I've also had people give me the tip of like, rather than buy a pound of hamburger, they buy um, links of hamburger or sausage or turkey links or patties. And so then they just ground those up when they need to make something quick and, just for themselves or for 1 or 2 people rather than waste a whole pound of the meat. Here are a couple popular Google websites: One Dish Kitchen or Dessert for Two. Those have good 1 to 2 serving recipes, so you're not wasting a lot if that's that kind of thing as well. Here's a few examples for things to think about if you're like looking to prep your lunches for the week. You could try salads or bowls. I know those are pretty popular and easy to prep ahead of time. So, maybe you go to the grocery store and you buy a big bucket of the salad greens, stock up on some vegetables, and then grab a few protein sources. And then through the whole week, you can kind of switch up what your salads look like. So here's an idea of like 5 different salads for your lunch week, all using different types of greens. And then varying your vegetables and your fat toppings and protein toppings to make the salads a little bit different, so it doesn't feel like you're eating the same monotonous thing every day. You could swip those salads into wraps or sandwiches. So same thing. Well, again, we're looking for carbs, proteins, and fats. So think about that as you're prepping your meals. And there's some good ideas there as well. Soups are another great way to get in lots of things and then to spread them out throughout the week. Obviously, when you make a batch of soup, there's quite a bit. So, save it in mason jars or whatever so you can heat it up at work easily and not have to waste additional dishes. If you're someone who freezes your soup, just remember that if you're freezing it in mason jars, you get the ones where the lid is not indented. So on this page, you can see how it's indented. Those are not for freezing. So make sure you get the jars that go straight up so that you don't break any of your jars. There's also some things you can just prep at work, like Bear Creek makes some great soups that you can just add water to and then bring to a boil for a while. So if you have a crock pot at work or something, just bring your packet, add water, dump it in, and then by lunchtime, you're ready for soup. Lipton has some single serving versions of that. So does Bob's Red Mill. If you're someone who's into vermicelli noodles, what they do is you put your noodles in the mason jar, add whatever vegetables you like, and then at work you add boiling water and it cooks the noodles. Stir it all together and add some seasonings. Make your own soup. Good snacks. So go back to that reference sheet that everyone's adding their ideas to, but here's some other ones. Again, we're focusing on protein, fat, and carb at these meals and these snacks. So like apple and butter, peanut butter, almond butter, yogurt, vegetables and dips, yogurt and berries, eggs and crackers. Chocolate milk has protein, fat, and carbs. So does regular milk. Protein shakes, nuts and yogurt, make your adult Lunchables, turkeys, crackers, and cheese or veggies. Toast with protein or fat toppings. Cottage cheese mixed in with different things. So get creative, but there's tons of ways to make healthy snacks, and that sheet everyone's sharing has a lot of great ideas too. It's just some more tips. Here's an example of someone who cooked chicken and some beef and some rice at the start of the week, and then they had different types of meals throughout their week. Like on Monday, it looks like they made a pan of chicken with their veggies, and then they could use that stuff leftover chicken for tacos, chicken tacos on Tuesday. Then they added quinoa for a rice dish on Wednesday. Thursday, they made some spaghetti with turkey, and then had leftover turkey or chicken or whatever for stir fry on Friday. So again, be creative, cook a lot of protein at the start of your week so it can last you for the rest of the week as well. More ideas. I won't get into those since we're short on time, but we'll get into the eating trends now. So these are a few that I'm going to focus on while we've got time. The DASH diet is pretty popular. Mediterranean diet, we'll talk about keto and paleo and sort of the difference between those two. What does intermittent fasting look like? Fiber forward is sort of a trending one these days. Low FODMAP diet, and then the Whole30. So there's a lot more out there, but these are some of the more common ones. The DASH diet's been around for quite a few decades. It's the dietary approach to stopping hypertension, aka blood sugar or blood pressure. So trying to remove a lot of salty foods is the ultimate goal here. It focuses on fruits and vegetables, whole grains, low-fat dairy, however, which is sort of out of touch scientifically, and limiting saturated fats, added sugars, and sodium. Oops, sorry, spelled sodium wrong. So some of these things are good, and some of them probably are a little bit outdated. Obviously, we know saturated fats can be helpful. Low-fat dairy is not always the best choice, but overall, this sort of diet has been shown to help with hypertension, if that's something you're dealing with. The Mediterranean diet gets a lot of popularity, especially linked to cardiovascular health, so reducing risk for heart disease and that kind of stuff, heart attacks. It's based on the patterns of what people eat that live along the Mediterranean Sea. So there's going to be a lot of fatty fish in this particular diet. They do focus on a lot of vegetables, particularly leafy greens and tomatoes, so lots of salads. Fruits typically are less Sugary, so berries and citrus and avocados fall into this category. Definitely whole grains versus processed high white type of carbs. So brown rice and quinoa. Beans and legumes are very popular in the Mediterranean Sea. Oftentimes, beans and legumes serve as their protein source over traditional red meats. Nuts, olive oils, seeds, and healthy fats. Again, I said lots of fish and seafood, sometimes up to 2 or 3 times a week. Fish is served as the main source of protein and such. So, strong emphasis on limiting red meats. And not a lot of salt in this type of diet. They really use a lot of herbs and spices when you find Mediterranean recipes and such. So, overall, a very good eating habit to follow. Keto versus paleo, there quite a few similarities, but a little bit of nuances to each of them. So keto typically is a very low carb eating plan. And basically by not eating enough carbs, remember last time we talked about carbs being like our first source of energy for the body. Obviously, if we're not giving our body any sugar to eat on a keto diet, it's got to switch the mechanism in which it gets energy. So it turns the body into ketosis mode, which then starts to turn fat into our fuel source and not carbohydrates and glycogen. So these people eat a lot of fat in their diet for that very reason, because their body is shifting to a different mechanism for getting energy. So hopefully this person's eating and focusing on a lot of healthy fats and oils and not necessarily the trans fats that we talked about that were bad. Lots of protein, probably lots of red meats and chickens and poultry as well. Full fat dairy. When they do eat carbohydrates, they're usually low carb, so that means pretty fibrous or not a lot of carbohydrate in them in general. So leafy greens, tomatoes, onions, and peppers. Probably not going to see a lot of potatoes or carrots in this kind of diet. And then nuts and seeds, so walnuts, almonds, that kind of stuff. They're avoiding most, if not all, fruits because fruits are pretty sugary. High starchy vegetables, grains, legumes, and of course, fat is their friend. So anything low fat, they're not eating because they want that full fat because that's where their body's getting the energy. A lot of people find success with weight loss on the keto diet. The problem is if people then start to ease off of that, a lot of times their body's not sure how to adjust. And so then they'll sometimes slip that weight back on if they're not careful with their diet. So, and some people stay keto their entire life. Some people are just in ketosis mode the entire time. I think Tom Brady eats like this now, and he's a professional athlete. So, we always say like you need carbohydrates to be able to like exercise and stuff like that. But people have proven that wrong, that our body can perform in a different mode of fuel burning. The paleo diet, this is more like natural, holistic eating. So again, they're still focused on high protein, also high fiber. Um, the goal here is to be like eat things that are found in nature, right? Like not tempered or modified. So they're looking at grass-fed meats and protein sources, a wild fish, wild game meats, free-range eggs and chicken, and pastured eggs versus confinement types of settings. Still focused on non-starchy fruits and vegetables. They like fresh is best in this particular eating style. Nuts and seeds obviously are pretty natural, healthy oils and fats. These people are not eating things processed. So breads, pastas, anything you're going to buy from a factory is not part of this diet, including things like dairy, because those have been modified as well. People do have success with this. I would say with the paleo diet, sometimes you can run into nutrition deficiencies depending on if you're not getting, depending on what kind of foods you're eliminating. But for the most part, I've seen success on this for people who do it well. It's hard though, because it's hard to go to the grocery store and find that kind of stuff. Intermittent fasting. This is probably the most popular right now. We're going to focus on short-term fasting because prolonged fasting is not recommended primarily in the medical literature for health. People will do long-term fasting though for more religious, spiritual type of reasonings and stuff, but there hasn't been a lot of research around the health benefits of greater than intermittent or short-term fasting. So fasting is just time-restricted eating. Some popular fasting ratios are the 12-to-12 method, which means you fast for 12 hours and then you have a 12-hour eating window. So that example might be like you're able to eat between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., but then you have nothing between 7 p.m. and the next morning at 7 a.m. 16/8 is also popular. This is an even shorter window of eating period. So you have 16 hours of fasting and an 8-hour window of eating. So this person might eat, say, for an example, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you're choosing to do fasting, your eating window should be when you're most active in your day. So, if you work the night shift, don't make your eating window during the day when you should be sleeping, right? So think about when your body is going to be requiring that fuel for activity. The reason intermittent fasting has been found to be beneficial is your body does a really good job of repair and rejuvenation and stuff when it's in a fasting state. So um, there's a reason why we need several hours of sleep at night, because our body needs that time with us away from food to get into a fasting state so it can do all its repair and rejuvenation and stuff. That's also the reason they call it breakfast, break the fast, because that's an important meal to get us out of the fast, for our body to enter into the activity window again. Alternate day fasting, this is a mechanism where someone eats normal one day and then the next day they fast and they flip-flop that. There's periodic fasting where people eat for consecutive days and then take like a 1 to 2 to 3 day break for fasting. And then I said prolonged fasting is when we're doing it for quite a few days in a row. And there's not much research behind the health benefits for that. Again, like I said, it's more spiritual and that kind of stuff. But there's lots of science coming out around fasting and helping reset blood sugars and insulin with people with diabetes and stuff. If this is if you have any of these, definitely do this in connection with your doctor though, because you got to be monitoring that stuff, because there are worries and concerns with glucose and insulin being not monitored and stuff. But if you're relatively healthy, a 12 to 12 probably should be how we're all eating. Stop eating at 7 p.m. And then start again the next morning. So hopefully this isn't too unnatural to the body. And I've seen lots of good research that this is helpful. And these people don't have calorie restrictions when they're on intermittent fasting, but just naturally they're not eating all day long or munching at inopportune times that are detrimental to the body. Fiber forward, this is one that just really emphasized on the benefits of fiber to the body and helping that clean the body's digestive systems out and stuff. So these people are really focused on vegetables because that's where we find the bulk of our fibers. So heavy on the vegetables. The Whole30, this is also popular for people, particularly who maybe are feeling like gut issues, inflammation, maybe bloating, gas, that kind of stuff. The Whole30 can be an appropriate eating plan. What you do is you start to eat really clean and healthy for 30 days, and then so focus on whole foods, like nothing processed, and then you slowly add in different types of potential triggers back into your diet to see when those symptoms reappear. So to begin with, you're not eating anything sugary, no alcohols or tobaccos, no processed carbs, no beans, nuts, legumes, and no dairy products. So we're talking really clean meats, eggs, fruits, and vegetables, right? And then you slowly add in 1 week or 2 weeks at a time these other things to see if any of your symptoms come back. And then you know that you probably have a sensitivity and can eliminate those from your diet. The low FODMAP, this is for people, again, with IBS issues. It's an elimination process similar to the Whole30, where you just, instead of eliminating everything at once, you pick something to eliminate for a couple of weeks at a time and then add it back in to see if it triggers it or not. So they focus on eating foods that aren't high triggers. So you can see some of those examples that they focus on that don't tend to cause a lot of IBS issues. And then they'll slowly add other things back in to see if that was what a trigger was for them. We have quite a few healthcare providers that encourage low FODMAP diets for people who are dealing or trying to figure out what's going on with their digestive system. Okay, so before we wrap up, what should I be eating? How many carbs should I have a day? How much protein? How much fat? It's very individualistic, so I'm not gonna be able to say that this is gonna be perfect for everyone. So this is just a generalization. So yours may need to look different. But in general, if you're trying to lose weight, protein is kind of the focus for you if you're trying to lose weight, and then minimizing carbohydrates. So for this particular individual, you know, your weight loss might be at least 35% of calories coming from protein, another 30% or so coming from fat, and then the remainder from carbohydrates. So what that looks like is if, say on my in-body sheet, my basal metabolic rate said 1,800 calories. That's the minimum calories I should be eating a day. But I'm also trying to be pretty active and exercise, right? Because I want to be healthy. So I'm burning some calories. So ideally in my day, my body probably needs 2,000 calories. If I'm trying to lose weight and still working out, I probably want to focus more on protein, right? And 35% of 2,000 calories is 700 calories. If you remember last week, we said there was 4 calories per gram. So if I divide 700 by 4, I need to eat about 175 grams of protein a day. That's a lot of protein. I'm probably not eating that much, so I'm probably not going to be losing much weight. Fat, similarly, there's 9 grams. So if I take 600 calories divided by 9, I need about 66 grams of fat in my day, and then 175 grams of carbs. So if you're someone who does MyFitnessPal or anything like that, it will show you your macro breakdown each day, and you can kind of see, am I in this range? Do I have about 35% protein? Am I eating too many or too little carbs or fat? You can kind of see if weight loss is your goal, how you're doing with your macros there. Example of what that might look like for an eating plan for breakfast, this person's going to need to eat some eggs, a little bit of oatmeal and berries, 45 grams of protein, 35 grams of carbs, 18 grams of fat. Then they're having a chicken and quinoa salad for lunch, lots more protein. For snacks, yogurt and nuts, more protein, right? But still carbs and fat in there too. Then they're having ground beef or a steak with a sweet potato and some broccoli. So overall, they're getting to that 175 grams of protein, 60-ish grams of fat, and whatever I said was for carbohydrates. So it can be done, but takes a lot of planning. If you're someone who just wants to kind of stay where you are, you don't want to try to lose weight or gain weight or anything like that, the general breakdown is about 30% fat, 30% protein, and 40% carbs. So allowing yourself a little bit more carbohydrate. If most of us probably went on MyFitnessPal and typed in our diet, most of us are probably closer to 60% carbs. So most of us are eating too many carbohydrates to begin with. And we could all probably benefit from eating more fat and protein. And like we said, excess carbs is what causes weight gain. So that's kind of why we're in the situation we're in. But everything out there that's good is carbohydrates, right? All right, that's it. We're almost to time, so I will take some quick questions. Again, big takeaway from the last 2 weeks is all 3 of those macronutrients matter in your diet. It's just the right combinations and making sure you're eating them together and not one without the other so that your body can use them well and not cause you any weight gain or anything. So I'll stop sharing. If you guys have any questions, we can take them now. Otherwise, we'll be back next week. I don't see any in the chat, so we'll let you go. Thanks, guys.